You're listening to the Love Unplugged podcast, episode 135. Mental health is gaining so much more awareness these days, and that's amazing, but it definitely still has a way to go to break through the stigmas that have been created. Today we're taking a deep dive into mental illness, how to be supportive as a friend, what it's like navigating the challenges of everyday life with mental illness as an entrepreneur, and then the tools that we can apply in our lives that will help us thrive. This is such a heartfelt chat, and I absolutely loved learning from my guest today, and I hope that you do also. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Hey there, I'm your host, Jessica Fragon, and I am passionate about doing the inner work needed to reach your goals. Let me be your guide as we navigate all the fears and insecurities that surface when it's time to step outside of your comfort zone. Along with my knowledgeable guests and industry experts, I'm here to teach you how to reawaken your life purpose and passion and create the steps to turn your intentions into action. Ultimately, my goal is to empower you to rise above those blocks holding you back and start living a life that you are worthy and deserving of. So come on, it's time to slow down, find a comfy spot with your favorite organic tea, and get inspired. Thank you for tuning in to the Love Unplugged podcast. Hello, loves. Today I am joined by the lovely Carla Arges, entrepreneur, author, mom, wife, and mental health advocate. She authentically shares her journey with bipolar and borderline personality disorder in hopes of breaking stigmas and showing women that they can thrive despite their diagnosis. So welcome, Carla. I am just so honored to have you as my guest, and I'm so excited to learn all about your story, your advice, everything that you've learned along your own journey. But before we start, for those that don't know you yet, I would love for you to share a little bit about you personally.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Jessica. I'm thrilled to be here. As you said, my name is Carla, and one of the things I love to do is help break stigmas around mental illness and show people that they don't need to be a victim to their diagnosis. They may need to pivot, but they can still thrive. And that's how I hope to encourage people in my platforms.
Absolutely. I love that. So let's start at the beginning. So what was your journey leading up to creating your business? What was your own personal health journey?
Well, you know, it started with really doing what I thought I had to do. And I think often a lot of people start there. Both of my parents are university educated, so I had to go to university and I had to get into business. And, I had to check all these boxes of what society expected of me. And the reality is, I don't fit in that box very well. And I struggled in corporate life, not because I couldn't do the job, but the way that my mental illnesses manifest meant that I needed more flexibility in how I were to do the job. And so I tried to find something that would allow me to use my strengths and take into account these very real challenges I had. And it was over the pandemic, really, that I thought, okay, what best supports me and how can I turn that into something to support other women in the same way?
Mm-hmm.
And out of that, Affirming Truth was born. And here we are.
Amazing. Now, is this something that you've always had to deal with in your life? Like the borderline personality disorder?
Yes. Now, those that struggle with their mental health will know it is a journey and a process in and of itself to get the right diagnosis. Then, once you have that, to get the right treatment. So, it's definitely been a long journey. My first attempt at my life, I was 13 years old. So, I struggled with mental illness from a young age and struggled with accepting it. When people tried to give me diagnosis and offer me help, there was a lot of stigma around it. And I felt a lot of shame associated with it. I felt a lot of fear associated with it. So I ignored my mental health to my own detriment for a long time. And it wasn't until I became a mom, actually. I have oh my goodness, a 13-year-old son now. How did that happen? Um, when I had my son, I realized that I was repeating some generational patterns of trauma that happened because parents did not face their mental health crisis. And I didn't want to repeat that with my son. And so I decided to take a serious look at my mental health, seriously look at what I had to do to be stable, to be the mom I wanted to be. That was my first priority. Even before business, I believe that as a mom, my first calling was to mother him, and I wanted to do that well. And I knew that I couldn't without addressing my mental health. So I took the medications, I went to therapy, and my only regret is that I didn't embrace that sooner, because my life has expanded in so many ways with having the proper treatment and the proper supports and the proper understanding of my mental illness.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. During that period of time before you sought help and you got the diagnosis and whatnot, where like you were still trying to figure out like what's going on, why do I feel this way, like how did you feel during that period, and how did you like get through navigating through everything that you were experiencing and then having to still show up in regular life?
Not without its challenges, for sure. I would say how I felt was an overbearing desire not to exist. I had racing thoughts. So with bipolar, I would get racing thoughts and all these good ideas and bursts of energy, and then never able to complete them, which would follow up with a huge depressive episode about I'm not good enough. What am I here for? A constant existential crisis, right? Like, who am I? Why do I exist? And feeling like I didn't want to exist. And I'd have to say that I'm a person of faith. So, a big sustaining factor for me when I wasn't getting treatment was just clinging to my faith. I
Mm-hmm.
remember, and this is a trigger warning for some, but I remember driving to my corporate Canada office daily, just wishing that a semi would hit me. And it was very hard. It took every ounce of me to show up and do my job, which meant there was nothing left for anything else. There was nothing left for my husband. There was nothing left for my friends. There was nothing left for me. Um, and I couldn't go on living that way, because once I had a son, there was nothing left for him either. So something had to change, something had to give. And one of the things that I had to embrace and understand as I started to carve out my own business and my own path is that I had to accept that I am limited. And that's not a popular statement in the self help world. It's actually not a popular statement in entrepreneurship. We see limits as bad. And I want to challenge that and say recognizing where you're limited helps you to redirect your focus and your energy to where you are strong. And I was able to push through to my strengths once I stopped hitting my head against the wall in the area that I was limited. We all have limitations.
Mm-hmm.
That's not victim speak if you use it to propel you towards your strengths.
That is so true. I love how you phrase that because it's true. Even me, I might not have a mental illness that I'm dealing with, but I still have limitations, right? It's just how you view it and how you use it to like thrive, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. Um, so I have a close family member that has a mental illness. Well, I think it's a mental illness. See, I'm not quite sure. It's chronic schizophrenia, right? So I would love to know, because I'm on the outside and I don't know what it's like for an individual to have something like that they have to deal with on a daily basis. Like, how can we from like the outside of it be able to like show up and be supportive, and like what what would you have needed during that period as you were healing from those close loved ones?
I love that question, and I love your heart behind wanting to be someone that can show up for someone struggling. I think a big thing to recognize is that one, it's not a choice, it's not a simple mindset. There's Mindset work is so important, but mental illness is not a lack of a strong mindset. Mental illness is not someone not doing the work on themselves, it is illness. And recognizing that we all have mental health, but we don't all have mental illness is important. Everyone experiences periods of sadness. That's part of mental health. Everyone experiences worry. That's part of our mental health and part of the natural human experience. But not everyone suffers from debilitating depression or debilitating anxiety or constant suicide ideation or psychosis. Like, mental illness is different. And I think recognizing that it's not a person's lack of trying to be healthy is an important part in breaking stigmas. And then understanding that it's very tiring. I describe it a lot like every day I'm in a battle against myself for myself. Every day I am, even now while I'm stable, I found a good medication regime, I go to therapy. I, for all intents purposes, am stable. That doesn't mean I'm still not daily fighting my illness. It just means I'm more equipped at doing it. So I'm better at doing it. But it's exhausting. So understanding that there's a natural fatigue, that returning that text message or that phone call or being the first person to reach out may be too much for that person. I know we often like to view relationships as give and take, and certainly there needs to be that. But in terms of initially reaching out and initiating plans, you might have to be okay with being the person that does that predominantly, because it's just so hard for someone struggling with mental health. And also just knowing that you don't need to fix it, just showing up and being a friend, just coming with some Starbucks and being okay of sitting in the tension with that person. Um, come with a frozen lasagna if a person's really down and having a hard time making dinner. Offering to go for a walk to encourage movement. Movement is so good and for everyone, but especially when you're trying to get to mental stability. And just realizing that it's exhausting.
Yeah.
And being patient and loving and grace-filled through that person's exhaustion. You may not understand what they're going to, but understanding doesn't need to be the goal. Just love and acceptance is.
Exactly. And go at their pace.
Yeah.
Right? I love that. That's great advice. At what point, so we know that when you had your child, you knew that you needed to seek help, right? You needed to be able to get the tools in order to help you be able to show up for your child as well. So I'd love to know, what was that process in getting help? What types of things did you learn? Like, what types of tools help you in your day to day? What does that look like for someone that is about to be like, okay, I need to reach out now. Like, now's the time. I'm ready for it. What is that going to
Yeah.
be like?
Great question. Well, first and foremost, for me, I need medication. And there's a lot of stigma around medication. And there's a lot of people that say, oh, you just need CBD or you just need this. Well, that may be true for some people, but there are very serious consequences for people with illnesses like bipolar or schizophrenia that are not medicated. So I would say embrace medication just like you would if you were a diabetic and needed insulin. It's not a commentary on you being weak. It's not a moral issue. It is a health and wellness issue. So I learned to embrace the need for medication and was patient in finding the right one. And it can be hard and it can be a discouraging process, but hang in there. Advocate for yourself with your doctor. And then definitely get into therapy. Medication is not the be all end all for wellness. I would say definitely get into therapy. That's where I'm learning the practical skills through cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavioral therapy. I'm learning the actual skills. For example, the other day, I was having trouble with disassociation, which is a common borderline personality symptom when you're highly stressed. And I learned one of the skills from my therapy is that changing my body temperature quickly can help bring me back to stability. So I now keep an ice roller in my freezer, and when I need to, I apply ice to my face. And this is a skill that I've learned that's very good at grounding you, bringing you back. And I wouldn't have known that skill, you know, learning how to redirect my thoughts. I used to try to avoid my thoughts. A lot of people with mental illness try to avoid their thoughts because it makes them uncomfortable, it brings pain. But that just allows the thought to persist like an irritating mosquito. What I've learned instead is to give space to the thought, to recognize it's there, but to call out the lie that it is. So when the thought comes in that I'm a horrible person, I'm so unworthy, no one loves me, I can say, I see you, but I don't accept you.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I know to be true. And I have a journal of affirmations. Part of my business is actually affirmation cards, biblically based ones, because that's important to me. That aligns to who I am. And learning to speak truth over the lies in my head. And then sleep hygiene is so important, guys. Sleep is so important. Not just for mental illness, but for health in general. There's so much restorative things that happen in sleep. So I need to get 9 hours of sleep. I used to try to force myself to wake up at 6 in the morning to do a workout, and I couldn't get to bed early enough to get my 9 hours, and I was suffering. And so I had to make trade-offs and say, no, my 9 hours of sleep were more important than being part of the 6 a.m. club. And those are some things that now that I'm an entrepreneur, I get to work my schedule around what suits me, which I'm so thankful for. So I sleep until 7:30, 8 o'clock. And that is an important piece of my mental health. Movement. I go for daily walks. I try to do 10K steps. Movement is so important. It's really just creating habits of wellness. And so important to make it a habit so that when you are down, when you are struggling with that wave of depression, with that wave of self-loathing, you have habitual skills to lean on. You don't have to remind yourself of what they are. You don't have to practice them like it's a new skill. You will be proficient in them because you do them daily as a habit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Same with business activities, right? It's no different from that. If it's those small daily business activities that move your business forward, that if you're consistent with over time, help you grow. It's the same with the mental illness and mental health. It's those daily activities that if you do consistently will help you grow in stability and help you grow in your ability to overcome the tough times when they arrive, because they will arrive. It doesn't go away. It just becomes more managed.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all of those little things that compound over time that lead to bigger results.
Absolutely.
And I love that you mentioned the importance of sleep, because even for me, like when I get really upset or if I'm having a really bad day or I get overwhelmed or anything like that, I have to take a nap. And then I wake up and I feel so much better. Like my brain just automatically is like, nope, you need to like sleep and take a moment to like recharge and then you're going to be better. But
Yes.
like sleep is so important. It does so much for you.
It's so important. And we get so focused on morning routines. I'd say it might even be more important to have an evening routine so you're set up for a good night's sleep. Making sure you have your room at a temperature,
Yes.
that it's dark, that you're not laying in bed scrolling your phone and having that light before you go to bed. It interrupts your sleep signals. I take magnesium and ashwagandha. I can't even say it. You know what
Ashwagandha?
I'm trying to say?
Yes.
Ashwagandha, that's it. Um, to help with calming and with sleep. Um, and making sure, that you're set up for good night's sleep.
Mm-hmm. Now you help other people that are dealing with similar struggles. So I want to know, at what point did you have this idea that you're going to turn everything that you've learned into a business and help other people?
Well, so after my stint in corporate life, I tried the network marketing life and it just wasn't for me. There's a lot of hustle culture in that environment. And for some personalities, they thrive in that. Hustle culture is not conducive to my mental health. So I felt like I was at this crossroads, and felt like I was a failure and questioning my worth. And so, like I said, I'm a person of faith, and that's really important to me. So I started to do a deep dive Bible study in what does God say about me? Right now, the lies in my head, my past, my mental illness is telling me all this garbage and it's weighing me down. What does God say about me? And I did this deep dive study and I came up with so many affirmations that were biblically based, that I'm loved, that I'm seen, that I'm whole, that I'm capable, that like all these wonderful affirmations that really spoke life into my spirit and my heart and my mind. And I just thought other women need that. Like there's other Christian women struggling with their identity, struggling with their worth, and struggling to get to know God better. Like with part of my struggle with my illness and the medication that I take is that my attention span is very short and it's very hard for me to focus. So to do any great big deep dive into Bible studies is difficult. And so I wanted to create resources for women who struggle like me with focus, with attention, but also have this need to know truth. And so now I create bite-sized chunks of Bible studies and these affirmation cards. And I created this confidence course about learning how to shift your confidence from self to God. And it's just been beautiful. I feel like I'm walking in tune with my purpose. I feel like all the things that I struggled with that I thought were bad are the very things that I'm using to draw on to help women thrive. And so it's this beautiful full circle moment for me.
I love that. Now, what was your experience growing your business? So I know that like with social media, sometimes it can be a little bit difficult, even for like me, where like you can receive negative feedback or like criticism, or like you get like the imposter syndrome. Like it's a
Yeah.
challenging place to be. So I'd love to know, what was your experience kind of diving into this new world, especially with what you're dealing with?
Oh God. Boundaries are very important. I
Mm.
don't follow accounts that don't make me feel good. If an account makes me question my body, and it doesn't mean that that person's bad, it doesn't mean that account's bad, but if how I'm taking in their information makes me feel less than in any other way, then that's an account I need to mute or unfollow, at least for a season. And I had to get okay with not chasing follows and likes. My social media account started as a health and fitness account when I was working in the network marketing world. And I changed course, I pivot. It's now a mental health and faith based account. And so I had to be okay within that pivot losing some followers and understanding that as I showed up in my authentic self, the right people would find me. And trusting that process, trusting your voice. Don't try to be someone else. You got to be you. And then the right people will find you. You have to be consistent. And by consistent, I don't mean forcing out content that isn't authentic, but you need to show up for your community, right? People are looking to you for whatever it is you offer, whether it's inspiration, whether it's business tools, whether it's social media support, whatever you offer, people are looking to you to show up in that space. And that's how you build a community, by showing up, by being real. Don't try to be too curated, but be authentic. And I know that sounds cliche, like what is authentic? It's filming the story and not rewatching it and refilming it 20 times. It's allowing your flaws to show through. You know what I mean? It's if you're silly, be silly. It's just being what sparks joy in you.
Mm-hmm. Be you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I definitely find that the people that I enjoy watching stories and their posts and all that stuff is people that just show up as they are. They don't have to be all made up all the time. Sometimes they are, and sometimes they look like they got hit by a truck, like
Yeah.
it's pretty bad, but that's who they are, and that's real, right?
And that's relatable because
Mhm.
we don't have it all together all the time.
Oh God, no.
Like, we are this beautiful blend of imperfection. It can be very intimidating to approach someone who you see as perfect.
Mhm.
That's no longer aspirational. That's depressing. Right?
Yes.
Show me the real stuff.
We know it's there. Just share it.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to know some big lessons and big wins that you've had as an entrepreneur, things that you look back on and you're like, that was such a great teaching opportunity, or holy smokes, like that actually happened in my business. Like, I'm just so damn proud of myself.
Well, I would say a big lesson is that you can't do it all on your own.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do it all on your own. In the entrepreneur work for yourself, we tend to silo as we need to do everything. And one of the best things I did for my business was invest in it by hiring a business coach.
Mm-hmm.
Hands down, one of the best things, especially because I knew, and this is about understanding yourself and knowing yourself, I knew my weaknesses. I know that I would struggle in the initial stages of confidence. I knew that I would struggle with overwhelm. I knew that I would struggle with jumbled ideas. I knew that I had this vision, but making it a reality would take someone holding my hand. I'm okay to admit that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I invested in my business with someone who saw my vision, who saw my passion, and who was able to say, okay, I know this is where you want to get, but here's where we have to start, and walk me through that. So big lesson is you can't do it all on your own, and it's worth the investment in your business to get people alongside you that support you where you're weak.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big lesson. My big, I can't believe I did it, or my big Yahoo celebration moment is just been able to share my story. I have been on so many podcasts this year. Well, for me, so many podcasts, and it has just been amazing to see how my story can resonate with women or business owners or moms, and seeing this whole community of people wanting to know that life with mental health challenges is not over,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to encourage women. That's what my heart really is after. My business is the business of encouragement, and being able to have people welcome me on their platform to their audience to share a story of encouragement has been humbling and exciting, and all the feels.
I love that. That's such a great win. It must feel so good to be able to vocalize your experience and know that you're making an impact with people that need it as well.
It does. And a lot of I have a past of homelessness and addiction and
Wow.
just messiness. messiness that I thought would destroy my life. And to see now how that messiness is a springboard to encourage other people just goes to show you that there's no story that's been written that can't be used for good.
Absolutely. And I just want to take that moment, like where you've come from, like homelessness, like the abuse, like the mental illness, like for those that are currently in those situations, it doesn't have to remain that way. Like it is possible for you to have a completely different life that you love.
It is. It is possible.
Yeah.
And you may have to grieve the life
Mhm.
you thought you were going to have.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to be an advertising executive living downtown, all these kids, and that's not the life that I'm living. My life is good. My life has turned out better. But I did have to go through a period of grieving what I thought life would be
Mm.
so that I could fully embrace what life is and make it the most that it could be. And now I'm living a life that I wouldn't have even been able to dream of before. I wouldn't have even been able to dream of it. It was not in my thought process. It was not on the horizon. And yet here I am, fully loved, fully supported, doing things that 16-year-old Carla would be so proud of.
Mm-hmm. I love that you said take the time to grieve what you thought your life was going to be like, because I think this applies to everybody. You might have this like idea of what your future might hold or what your life is going to be like, and that might not be the case, and that's okay. But if you're not taking that time to grieve and just to like move through those emotions, you might not be able to see what's actually in front of you and how your life actually is, and that it's even better than what you thought it would have been.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's such a great one. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about more of the stuff that you help people with. So, how important is self-worth, and how does a lack of it affect your life?
Well, if you don't believe you're worthy, you're not going to show up. If you don't believe that you're going to be accepted, you're not going to show up. If you don't believe that you have value, you're not going to share your gift with the world. And so, knowing that you have value, you have worth, you have a unique gift and talent that no one else has. I don't care if you think the space is saturated. No one's going to do it the way you do it. No one's going to bring your experience or your personality or your passions in the same way. You have a gift to share with the world. And so knowing that you have value and worth is so important in order to show up and make that impact. Because that's what I believe that we're all here for. We're all here to impact others for the positive. We're all here to impact others for the greater good. And if you're not showing up doing that, the world is missing your impact.
Mm-hmm.
And then for me, as a woman of faith, it's important that I recognize that my worth isn't about what I do. It isn't about what I've done. It isn't about who I know. It's not about the size of jeans I wear. My worth is inherent in who I am because I was created with worth. I don't have to earn it and I can't lose it. I was created that way. And that has been a huge truth and reality in my life that I've really had to grab hold of and remind myself of that often. Like I have mind gremlins. I have that inner bully, right? That
Mm-hmm.
wants to accuse me of my past or throw up my failures as some sort of obstacle to keep moving forward. And I have to be like, I see you, but you don't get to define me.
Mm-hmm.
Only the one that created me can define me. And this is what he says about me. And that obviously is a faith perspective, but even if you don't share my faith, understanding that your value and your worth is inherent in your being, not about
Mhm.
who you know, what you do, what the scale says. Especially for women, it's not about your physical appearance. You're valuable and worthy.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, where did this darn voice come from? Like,
Right?
why is she there? Why does she speak up? Why does she have this own like brain of hers that like thinks only negatively? Like, how
And
did
she comes at us at such a young age. I
Mhm.
remember being 8 years old and worried about how fat I looked
Oh
at
my
8.
God.
Like,
8 years old.
8 years old. Like, you know, it's I could go on a tangent about this, but society really tries to limit the influence of women by getting us so preoccupied on the things that don't actually matter. We
Mhm.
get so preoccupied, and I'm guilty of this, right? I'm I have huge body dysmorphia. I'm overcoming disordered eating. It's been a journey the last couple of years, but we get so, for some reason, we've tied so much of our value and our worth to how we look. Do we look youthful? Do we look skinny? And we put so much effort and mind energy. Like, there's a lot of mind energy that goes into battling body image. We
Mhm.
put so much attention and effort and mind energy on that, that if we would filter that energy towards what our impact activities are, what our passion is, what our purpose is, we would be such an unstoppable force.
Mhm. Absolutely. Oh, it's wasted time and energy.
It is. And it's so prevalent, and
Mhm.
it's everywhere that you look.
Yeah.
I'm going on this journey right now. This is off topic
No, it's
of
fine.
growing out my grays. I started to grow gray when I was in my early 20s. And I've decided I'm going to grow out and go gray. And I'm scared. And I had to really challenge myself, like, why am I scared of going gray? And the reality is, if I got honest, it was because I had associated more power, more influence, more being taken seriously, more being liked by being youthful. And somehow gray hair was old. And we see that in the media, right? Like, as a female actress going gray, you become the mother and the grandmother. You're no longer the sex symbol.
Mhm.
But a male actor who goes gray, he's still, sexy and distinguished as ever.
Yeah.
And we subconsciously take these messages and just screw ourselves over with them.
Absolutely. I've been feeling that with like I'm starting to get some gray hair coming in now, and it's definitely taken a toll on my like how I feel about myself and how I show up because like
Mhm.
with COVID, we're very restricted. I have to be extremely cautious because my family is very high risk. There's some illness there that, just we have to be very, very cautious. So I've
Right.
haven't gone to the hairdresser. I went once, I think in 2020 to like chop off my hair because it was getting ragged and super, super long. But I
Mhm.
haven't been coloring my hair. I have been like keeping up with it. I haven't gotten my eyebrows done in 2 years, like all these types of things. And like I'm starting to see the gray hairs coming in, which is definitely taking a toll on me. And that spun me through this darn rabbit hole that I was like, I'm getting older. Am I still going to be relevant in this online space as a business owner? Are
Yep.
people still going to want to work with me? Like, am I going to be kind of put to the side now because all these younger women are coming in doing similar work?
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's just so
We're afraid
much.
of being put out to pasture.
Mm-hmm.
I can totally identify that, and if I could just encourage you, embrace it. It's a hard thing to do.
It's hard.
It is so hard, but the fact that it was so hard really caught my attention, and
Mm-hmm.
I am like, "If this is so hard, that means it has power over me,
Yeah.
and I wanna live a life of freedom. I don't want anything to have power over me. This has power over me. My hair color is dictating how I feel, how I show up, what I do, and that just does not pass the vibe check with me. So I'm challenging it. And
Absolutely.
I know it's going to be awkward. I know I'm going to have moments of absolute horror as it grows out. We all know that there's awkward grow out stages for everything. So I fully anticipate some tears, but I really, I really want to live a life of freedom
Mm-hmm.
and define that for myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It was pretty funny. I don't know if you follow this person, Jillian Harris. So she, got tired of having to like dye her hair all the time or color her hair because the gray would be growing in certain areas that would just require her to do it. So during this whole period of time, she chose to just embrace it and let the gray grow out and all that stuff. And it was just so funny because there was like actual debates about whether she should keep it or whether she should go back to brown. And people like had strong opinions about it. And I'm just like, holy smokes, like this, how is this like such a big deal?
Right? Would
It's
you ever
hilarious.
have a group of men debating that?
No,
No.
of
And
course
yet,
not.
for women, this is where we put our energy. And I'm not saying it's wrong.
Yeah.
I just want us to be challenged in thinking, what impact could I make if I rechanneled that energy someplace else?
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's think about that. Like, how would I show up differently with more energy as a mom or as a wife or as a business owner or someone in ministry, as a friend? How would I be different if I took that energy and channeled it elsewhere?
Absolutely. Oh, that's such a great point. Something that we should all pause to kind of reflect on. It's
Hmm.
hard though, right? Like, show yourself a little grace. You're going to have those moments, but
Oh, yes, it's
reflect.
hard. It's simple, but it's not easy. It's
Yeah.
not easy. I mean, you have the whole world telling you the opposite message, that you
Mm-hmm.
need to be thin and you need to be young and you need to be this. And really,
Yeah,
is that what I need to be?
exactly.
Or am I going back to that truth that my worth and my value is inherent
Mm-hmm.
in who I am?
Yeah,
And that the purpose that is God given to me and to you doesn't rely on the color of my hair.
absolutely.
Just something to consider.
I mean, when we were young and when we teach our kids, we're constantly telling them it's not about the outside, it's about you on the inside, who you are as a person, what you do, how you make people feel, all that type of stuff. And then somewhere along the way in the middle, we get lost from that idea. And then hopefully we make our way back to it as we get older. But how do we get like not off track? Like,
Right? And this is stuff that we would tell our best friend. We would tell our
mm-hmm,
best friend, like, no, you're so worthy. You're so valuable. Like, don't listen to that garbage. And yet we listen to the garbage.
yeah. So then do we
It
like
is
actually
so
believe it?
easy to speak life over someone else, and yet
Mhm.
it's so difficult to speak life into our own circumstance and our own situation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, I have a question that is completely off topics. Now, you've
Yes.
had many podcast interviews, you've shared your story with a lot of people. I would love to know from you, is there something that you wish people would ask you about that you would have the opportunity to talk more about? Like usually podcast interviews, you get similar type questions and whatnot. But I'd love to know if there's something that you have on your heart that you'd like to talk more about that you haven't been given that opportunity for.
Oh, that's such a great question. Um, I often talk about mental illness, and that's really a big one on my heart and my faith. I think one thing I would love to talk more about, that's not business related, is actually mothering with gentle parenting and mothering a child with mental illness. So my son has OCD and a tic disorder, and I think that there's just a special way that we can love on our kids and encourage our kids that builds real, we talk about self-worth, that builds real self-worth. And treats them like people. I think sometimes we have such high expectations of kids on things that we can't even do ourselves. Like, we expect our kids to be able to control their emotions. Well, half the time we can't even control our emotions. That is a learned skill that takes time and development. We expect our kids to be so responsible and so resourceful and all of these things where they're just humans with big feelings and struggles and real concerns, and we often dismiss their concerns because they don't know what it's like to pay the bills or have to keep a roof over our head. But the concerns that they feel at their stage of development are big. They're big. And we need to help our kids manage through those big things so they can be competent adults that go into the world capable of making incredible impact.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw this story yesterday from someone I follow, and her child went to school for the first time. I think it was for the first time. And she was really, really good at school. Everything went really well, the teacher said, and whatnot. And then she came home and she had like multiple meltdowns and just was acting out and like all that stuff. And, her as a mom and the husband, they just didn't understand what was going on, like why she was behaving this way. But then she got sent this video explaining that the child had to keep it together all day at school. They had to navigate these big emotions. They might have been a little bit nervous, but they had to keep it together. They had to try to understand the rules that they had to follow, all those types of things. And because they had to like keep it all together that whole day, when they got home, they felt comfortable enough to let those emotions out.
Yes.
Like, there's just so much to learn with kids and how they navigate day-to-day stuff, like as a child who doesn't have the tools that us adults have.
Yes. And oftentimes when we lose it in our kids, it has nothing to do with our kids, and it has to do with our own unresolved trauma or triggers or issues. It's not the child. And yet we allow ourselves to be triggered in our unhealed spots and take it out on our child. And I think we could do so much good if we would recognize and own our own emotional weaknesses and hurts and work at becoming whole people. So then when our child's having a meltdown, instead of being triggered by it, be comforted by it that your child sees you as a safe enough place to have that expression.
Yeah. They have to let it out, right? Like, it's not, we all know as adults, it's not good to bottle in your feelings and your emotions and whatnot. Like, that can manifest into illness on its own when you keep everything in. So it's healthy for them to express themselves. They might not be doing it in the most productive way, but that's all they know.
And in this world where there is increasingly a mental health pandemic happening, we need to be able to raise our kids to be mentally healthy. Like, for me, that's far more above academics. How can I raise my child to be emotionally and mentally healthy? Because nowadays the academics will come. He can be an entrepreneur. There's so many opportunities for gainful employment. But will he have the mental and emotional strength to get through the hard stuff that will inevitably come? The hard stuff will come. We can't protect our kids from it. So we need to raise them to be able to cope in healthy ways.
Absolutely. You can learn anything in like business or work and all that stuff. Like, those are all new skills, new programs, like all those types of things you can learn. But the mindset and the emotional stability and all that stuff is like, it's harder. Things that you need to develop and you need to constantly work on. It's so important to start them off early.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to know more about what you have to offer your community. So what do you have available to help people?
Well, the big thing that I'm so super excited about And I'm not quite sure when this will air, but I am launching a podcast and I'm
Ooh.
so excited. So September 13th is my launch date. It is a podcast meant to be a safe space to encourage women where they're at in their journey through faith, particularly in the valleys and the hard seasons. And I'm so excited. So I would just love if anything about me resonates with you, if you could check out that podcast come September 13th, Affirming Truth with Carla Arges. It will be on Apple and Spotify and all the places. So I'm super excited about that. That's my little baby right now.
Congratulations on that upcoming launch. That's exciting.
Thank you.
Anything else that you'd like to share that you have available?
Yes, I do run periodically a confidence course. Again, my business is a faith-based business. So just to be clear that it is a faith-based business, the confidence course I run is all about learning how to move from self to God confidence and looking at it from even a scientific approach about how our brains are wired and how we can rewire them and really bring to life the scripture about renewing your mind. I'll be running that again in the new year. I have biblically based affirmation cards and Bible study guides, digital download Bible study guides that you can find on my website. I just recently became a partner with the Bible app, and my latest Bible plan just went live on the Bible app, so you can find me there. And that plan that I submitted with them is specifically about mental health. So if you're struggling in that area and you're a person of faith, it's a 6-day Bible plan. I would love for you to check that out. And yeah, I'm just so excited to be encouraging women along the way.
Amazing. So if anybody wants to learn more about you, they want to connect with you, where do you hang out the most?
I hang out the most on Instagram on my personal account, Carla Arges. And you can also find me online at www.carlaarges.com.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Carla, for sharing your incredible story and for helping us better understand what it's like living with mental illness and how we can support those that are a little bit better. You're total inspiration, and I'm so thankful for all the incredible advice you've shared today.
Thank you so much for having me, Jessica.
I'm Jessica, and thanks for tuning in today to Love Unplugged, the podcast. If there are any questions or topics you'd love answered on the show, head on over to www.projectloveco.com and share your request with me. If you haven't yet, go to iTunes and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast and share it with a loved one. Your feedback means the world to me, and the community we've created is what fuels our discussions here. After all, this is all for you. Join me next time for another unplugged conversation.